The Duke's mother begged her to be a fake bride, but when he kissed her at the altar, he whispered, "My heart still belongs to someone else." Every woman dreams of her wedding day. She dreams of the moment the groom lifts her veil. She dreams of the look in his eyes, a look of wonder, of adoration, of love. But when the Duke of Ashworth lifted my veil, his eyes held none of those things. They held ice. They held resentment. They held a profound, aching boredom. I was the bride his mother had bought for him. I was the transaction he had agreed to in order to secure his inheritance. I was Lily, the invisible seamstress, dressed in a gown I couldn't afford, marrying a man who didn't know I existed. But I knew him. I knew the way his jaw clenched when he was trying to hide his pain. I knew the way he tapped his fingers when he was nervous. Because 5 years ago, for one magical night, I wasn't Lily the seamstress. I was a mystery in a silver mask. And we had fallen in love. He thinks he is marrying a stranger. And when he leaned in to kiss me at the altar, he whispered a secret that was meant to break my heart, but instead, it stopped it cold. Do not expect love, madam. My heart still belongs to the woman in the silver mask. And I will find her. He is rejecting me, to stay loyal to me. Welcome to Chapter 1. This is a story of mistaken identity, hidden yearning, and a love so strong it survived 5 years of silence. If you love a romance where the hero is obsessed with the heroine, he just doesn't know it yet, hit that like button. And make sure you are subscribed, because the mask is about to slip. Now, let's walk down the aisle. My life was measured in inches of lace and spools of thread. I was 23 years old, and I was invisible. I sat in the back room of Mrs. Gable's dress shop, my fingers pricked and bleeding, squinting in the dim light. My father, the late vicar, had left me nothing but a library of books and a mountain of gambling debts. To pay them, I sewed until my eyes burned. "Lily!" Mrs. Gable shouted from the front. "A customer. Hide those rough hands and come out here." I sighed, smoothing my plain grey dress, and walked into the showroom. I expected a merchant's wife needing a hem fixed. Instead, I found the Dowager Duchess of Ashworth. She stood in the center of the shop like a monument to power. She wore black silk, diamonds at her throat, and held a cane topped with silver. She was terrifying. She looked at me. Her sharp eyes scanned my face, my figure, my worn shoes. "You," she said. "You are the vicar's girl. Lily, isn't it?" I dropped a curtsy, my heart pounding. "Yes, Your Grace." "You have a pleasant face," she said critically. "Quiet. Unassuming. You will do." "Do for what, Your Grace?" The Dowager didn't mince words. She walked closer, her scent of expensive rosewater filling the dusty shop. "My son," she stated, "is an idiot." I blinked. The Duke, Your Grace? He turns 30 in 1 month. If he is not married by his birthday, the entailment on the Ashworth estate triggers a clause that passes the title to his cousin. A detestable man with no chin. She tapped her cane on the floor. "Julian refuses to marry. He has rejected every debutante in London. He claims he is waiting." She said the word with disdain. "Waiting for whom?" I asked, though a cold shiver went down my spine. I knew. God help me, I knew. "A ghost," the Dowager scoffed. "Some woman he met at the masquerade ball 5 years ago. He doesn't know her name. He doesn't know her face. All he remembers is a silver mask and a conversation about poetry. He has spent 5 years hunting her. He calls her his soul's match." My knees felt weak. I grabbed the counter for support. 5 years ago. I had been 18. I was working as a maid in the Duke's household then. I had borrowed, stolen, really a gown and a mask from the mistress's wardrobe. I had snuck into the ball just to see the lights. I didn't mean to talk to him. I didn't mean to dance with him. But we had talked for hours. In the garden, under the stars, we spoke of art, of dreams, of loneliness. He didn't see a servant. He saw me. And then, at midnight, I ran. Because if he knew I was a maid, the magic would die. "He needs a wife," the Dowager continued, snapping me back to the present. "A placeholder. Someone to sign the registry, produce an heir if we are lucky, and look presentable at dinner. He doesn't need to love you. He just needs to marry you. She placed a heavy bag of gold on the counter. I know about your father's debts, Lily. I know you are about to lose your cottage. Marry my son for 1 year. I will clear the debts. I will give you the deed to your house. And after the year, you can retire to the country with a generous allowance. She looked me in the eye. Will you be the Duchess of Ashworth? I looked at the gold. It was freedom. It was safety. But then I thought of Julian. If I married him as Lily, the plain, invisible seamstress, I would be killing the memory of the woman in the silver mask. I would be forcing him to give up on his dream. He will hate me, I whispered. He is indifferent to everyone, the dowager shrugged. Hate would be an improvement. Do we have a deal? I closed my eyes. I thought of the debt collectors banging on my door. I thought of Julian, alone in that big house, chasing a ghost. Maybe if I was close to him, I could make him love the real me. Not the mask, but me. Yes, I said. I accept. The wedding day was grey and bleak. There were no flowers. No guests, other than the dowager and 2 witnesses. We were married in the private chapel of Ashworth Manor. I wore a dress of cream silk that the dowager had provided. It was beautiful, but it felt like a costume. I stood at the altar, shivering in the draughty stone church. And then, the doors opened. Julian walked in. My breath caught in my throat. He was even more handsome than I remembered. He was tall, his shoulders broad in his black velvet coat. His hair was dark, windswept. But his face was made of stone. He didn't look like a groom. He looked like a man walking to the gallows. He walked up the aisle. He didn't look at me. Not once. He stared straight ahead at the crucifix, his jaw clenched so tight a muscle feathered in his cheek. He stepped up beside me. He smelled of rain and cedar wood and old books, the scent I had carried in my memory for 5 years. Your Grace, the priest began. The ceremony was a blur. I spoke my vows in a whisper. I, Lily, take thee, Julian. He spoke his vows like he was reading a contract. Monotone. Flat. I, Julian, take thee, Lily. He didn't even know my last name. Then came the moment. You may kiss the bride. Julian turned to me then. For the first time, he looked down. His eyes were the color of a stormy sea, grey, turbulent, and utterly cold. He lifted my veil. His fingers brushed my cheek. They were freezing. He didn't recognize me. Why would he? At the ball, I had worn a wig. I had worn paint. I had carried myself like a queen. Now, I was just the vicar's mousy daughter. He leaned in. I closed my eyes, my heart hammering against my ribs. Please, I prayed. Please feel it. Please feel the spark we had in the garden. His lips touched mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a seal. A closure. It was dry, brief, and completely devoid of emotion. But as he pulled away, he paused. His mouth hovered near my ear. The dowager was watching. The priest was watching. They thought it was a moment of intimacy. But Julian whispered words that slashed through me like a blade. Do not expect love, madam, he breathed, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. This is a business arrangement. Nothing more. I froze. He wasn't done. My heart, he whispered, a tremor finally entering his voice, still belongs to the woman in the silver mask. She is out there. Somewhere. And I will find her. He pulled back. He looked at me with a challenge in his eyes, daring me to be hurt. Daring me to demand his affection. But I wasn't hurt. I was devastated. He was still in love with me. He was so loyal, so steadfast, that he was rejecting his own wife to stay true to a memory of a girl he met for 4 hours. He loved my soul. But he despised my reality. I looked up at him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and shout, "It's me. I'm the girl in the garden. I'm the one who told you that the moon looked like a broken coin," but I couldn't. If I told him now, if I told him that his princess was just a servant who had tricked him, the love in his eyes would turn to disgust. He cherished the mystery. He would hate the lie. So I swallowed the truth. It tasted like ash. I understand, Your Grace, I whispered back. He looked surprised by my submission. He nodded once, sharply, and offered me his arm. Come, he said, turning away from the altar. The carriage is waiting. We have a long, silent drive ahead of us. We walked down the aisle together. Husband and wife. Strangers. He was searching the world for a ghost. And he had no idea he was holding her hand. The knot is tied. The trap is set. Julian thinks he is trapped in a loveless marriage with a boring stranger. Lily knows she is trapped in a lie that could destroy everything. How long can she keep her secret? And what happens when she finds the shrine he has built to her memory? Join me for Chapter 2, The Shrine. I found a hidden room in my husband's study, and realized he is obsessed with Emmy. Have you ever been jealous of yourself? It is a strange, torturous kind of madness. For 2 weeks, I have lived in Ashworth Manor as the Duchess. But in reality, I am a ghost. My husband, Julian, barely speaks to me. We eat in silence. We sleep in separate wings of the house. He looks at me with polite indifference, seeing only the mousy seamstress his mother bought for him. But every night, he locks himself in his study. The servants whisper about it. They say he is talking to someone. They say he is reading old love letters. They say he is worshipping at a shrine. Today, I broke the rules. I went into the forbidden study, and I found out the truth. He isn't ignoring me because he is heartless. He is ignoring me because he is desperately, hopelessly in love with a woman he met 5 years ago. He has painted her. He reads her letters every night, weeping over the words. But here is the tragedy. I am that woman. I wrote those letters. I wore that mask. And when he caught me in his sanctuary today, he didn't realize he was looking at his lost love. He looked at me with disgust and said words that will haunt me forever. Don't touch those. Those belong to a woman with a soul of fire, not a quiet mouse like you. Welcome to Chapter 2. The secret is out, but the misunderstanding is deeper than ever. If you enjoy a romance that hurts so good, hit that like button. And make sure you are subscribed, because Lily is about to decide that being a mouse is no longer an option. Now, let's open the forbidden door. Being the Duchess of Ashworth was lonely. The manor was a sprawling labyrinth of cold stone and shadowed corridors. It was beautiful, yes, but it felt empty. Julian, my husband, the Duke, was a phantom. I saw him at breakfast. He would hide behind his newspaper, muttering a polite good morning, Lily, before retreating to his side of the table. I saw him at dinner. He would ask about my day with the enthusiasm of a man asking about the weather. It is raining, I would say. Indeed, he would reply. And then, he would disappear. He goes to the West Wing study. The maid, Sarah, whispered to me one morning as she laced my corset. No one is allowed in there, Your Grace. Not even to dust. The master has the only key. What does he do in there? I asked. Sarah lowered her voice. He hunts, He spends hours staring at maps. Writing to investigators. Looking for her. The mystery lady. The silver mask. Me. I felt a pang of guilt so sharp it nearly winded me. Why didn't I tell him? It seems so simple, doesn't it? Just walk up to him and say, Julian, it's me. I was the girl in the garden. But it wasn't simple. 5 years ago, I wasn't a debutante. I wasn't a lady. I was a scullery maid who had stolen a dress to sneak into a ball I had no business attending. If I told him the truth, I wouldn't just be revealing my identity. I would be revealing a deception. I would be telling him that his magical, mysterious princess was just a servant who scrubbed floors. He loved the fantasy. He would hate the reality. He would feel tricked. And Julian, a man of honor, despised liars. So I stayed silent. I played the part of the quiet, boring wife, while he pined for a girl who didn't exist. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the opportunity arose. Julian had gone into London to meet with his solicitors. He would be gone for hours. I was walking past the West Wing study when I noticed something strange. The door was ajar. He must have been in a rush. He had forgotten to lock it. My heart hammered in my chest. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it was an invasion of privacy. But I had to know. I had to know how much he remembered. I pushed the door open. The room was dark, the curtains drawn tight against the afternoon gloom. It was cluttered, filled with books, maps, and globes. But my eyes were drawn instantly to the far wall. It was a shrine. There was an easel set up near the window. On it was a painting. I walked closer, my breath catching in my throat. It was a portrait. It was unfinished, the edges blurred, but the subject was unmistakable. It was a woman in a silver ball gown. Her hair was piled high, adorned with pearls. And over her eyes, she wore a delicate, filigree silver mask. He had painted me. He had painted me from memory, 5 years later. He got the curve of my neck right. He got the way I held my hands right. But the eyes in the painting were blazing with life, with mischief, with a fire that I had long since extinguished in my daily life. "Oh, Julian," I whispered, reaching out a trembling hand to hover over the canvas. Below the painting, on a small desk, sat a wooden box. It was open. Inside was a stack of letters. They were tied with a faded blue ribbon. The paper was yellowing, the edges worn soft, as if they had been handled 1,000 times. I knew those letters. I had written them. 5 years ago, after the ball, I had been desperate to speak to him again. I couldn't visit him, I was a servant. So I had written to him anonymously. I had poured my soul onto cheap parchment, talking about poetry, about the stars, about the ache of loneliness. I had slipped them under the estate gates at midnight. I thought he had thrown them away. I picked up the top letter. My hands shook so hard the paper rattled. I read the words I had written at 18. "We are all just lonely stars, searching for a constellation to belong to. You told me you felt invisible in a crowded room. I feel the same. Perhaps that is why we saw each other." There were tear stains on the paper. Fresh ones. He had been crying over this letter. Recently. Maybe last night. He was in love with my mind. He was in love with my soul. He cherished every word I had ever written to him. And yet, every morning, he looked at me, the living, breathing author of these words, and saw nothing. The tragedy of it choked me. I pressed the letter to my chest, a sob escaping my lips. "I'm here," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm right here, Julian. What are you doing?" The voice was a roar. I spun around, dropping the letter. Julian stood in the doorway. He had returned early. He looked terrifying. His face was pale with rage, his chest heaving. He looked from me to the open box, and his expression turned murderous. He crossed the room in 3 long strides. "Get away from there." He grabbed my arm and yanked me away from the desk, positioning himself between me and the letters, as if shielding a child from a predator. I found the door open, I stammered, terrified. I thought perhaps the maids needed it cleaned. "Cleaned," he shouted. "You do not clean this room. You do not enter this room. No one enters this room." He turned and frantically began gathering the letters, checking to make sure they weren't damaged. His hands were shaking. He touched the paper with a reverence that broke my heart. "These are private," he hissed, turning back to glare at me. "Do you have no concept of privacy, madam? Do you think because I bought you a ring, you own my past?" "I didn't mean to pry," I said, tears spilling over. "I just saw the painting. She is beautiful." He looked at the painting of the woman in the silver mask. His anger seemed to drain away, replaced by a crushing, overwhelming grief. "Yes," he whispered. "She was." He looked at me then. He really looked at me. He saw my plain grey dress. He saw my messy hair. He saw my tear-streaked face. And he compared me to the fantasy. His eyes hardened. "Do not touch these again, Lily," he said cold, his voice like a lash. He held up the letter I had just been holding. "These letters belong to a woman with a soul of fire. A woman who challenged me. A woman who understood the universe." He took a step closer, looming over me. "You are a perfectly adequate wife, Lily. You are quiet. You are obedient. You are safe. He sneered the word safe. But you are a mouse. A quiet, timid mouse. Do not try to inhabit the space of a lioness. You will only embarrass yourself. The insult hit me like a physical slap. A mouse. He thought I was empty. He thought I was dull. He didn't know that the fire he loved in those letters was my fire. He didn't know that the lioness was standing right in front of him, forced into a cage of poverty and silence. I wanted to scream the truth. But looking at his face, twisted with protective love for the woman in the mask, I realized he wouldn't believe me. He didn't want the mouse to be the lioness. He wanted them to be separate. So I swallowed my pride. I swallowed the truth. I apologize, Your Grace, I whispered, dropping my gaze. I will not disturb your ghosts again. I turned and walked to the door. Lily, he called out. I paused, hand on the frame, hoping for an apology. Close the door behind you, he said. And lock it. I stepped into the hallway and shut the door. Sound effect, the click of the lock. A stifled sob. I leaned against the wall, sliding down until I hit the floor. He loved me. He loved the real me, the writer, the dreamer, the girl in the mask. But he hated the wife he had married. I wiped my tears. He thought I was a mouse. Fine. I stood up. A cold resolve settled in my chest. I had 1 year. 1 year to prove him wrong. I wasn't going to tell him who I was. I was going to show him. I was going to make him fall in love with Lily. I was going to show him that the mouse had claws. And when he finally realized the truth, he was going to regret every single word he said in that study. The game was on. The gauntlet has been thrown. Julian thinks his wife is boring. He thinks she has no soul. He has no idea that she is the author of his obsession. Join me for Chapter 3, The Ink and the Spark. I started leaving secret notes for my husband, and he finally looked at me. He called me a mouse. He told me I had no fire. He told me I was safe, boring, and forgettable. For 2 days, those words burned inside me like a fever. I wanted to cry. I wanted to pack my bags and leave. But then, I remembered something. I am not a mouse. I am the woman who charmed a duke in a garden under the stars. I am the woman whose letters kept him awake for 5 years. He fell in love with my mind once. I decided I was going to make him do it again. I stopped hiding in the shadows. I started playing the piano at midnight, letting the music drift through the halls like a ghost. I started sneaking into the library, finding the books he was reading, and writing notes in the margins, challenging him, teasing him, debating him. And it worked. The Duke stopped looking through me. He started looking at me. He looked confused. He looked intrigued. He looked hungry. But tonight, in a carriage trapped by a storm, the game went too far. The lightning flashed. The walls closed in. And for one terrifying, beautiful moment, he forgot about his ghost. He leaned in to kiss me. But he stopped. Because his loyalty is his greatest flaw. Welcome to Chapter 3. The mouse is dead. Long live the lioness. If you love a slow-burn romance where the intellectual chemistry is just as hot as the physical, hit that like button. And make sure you are subscribed, because the masquerade ball is coming, and the truth is about to come out. Now, let's rewrite the story. The war began with a book of poetry. It was 3 days after Julian had found me in his study. 3 days since he had called me a quiet mouse. He had left a copy of Lord Byron on the table in the main library. It was open to a poem about tragic, lost love. Of course it was. I walked into the library when he was out riding. I picked up the book. I took a fountain pen from his desk. In the margin, next to a stanza about eternal suffering, I wrote, "Suffering is not a virtue, my lord. It is merely a lack of imagination. A true romantic fights for the present, rather than mourning the past." I left the book open. And I waited. That evening, at dinner, Julian was quiet. But he wasn't looking at his plate. He was looking at me. He was squinting slightly, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "Did you go into the library today, Lily?" he asked, his voice guarded. I took a sip of wine, keeping my expression perfectly calm. I did, Your Grace. I was looking for something to read. I found your Byron. I hope you don't mind that I left a annotation. He stared at me. You think suffering is a lack of imagination? I think dwelling on ghosts prevents one from seeing the living, I said softly. He dropped his fork. It clattered against the china. It was the exact same sentiment I had written in one of my letters 3 years ago. I saw the recognition flash in his eyes, not that I was the writer, but that I sounded eerily like her. He didn't speak for the rest of the meal. But he didn't leave the table early, either. 2 nights later, I escalated the war. At the masquerade ball 5 years ago, I had told Julian that I played the piano. He had told me that music was the language of the soul. So, at midnight, when the house was silent, I went to the music room. I sat at the grand piano. I hadn't played in years, not since my father died, but my fingers remembered. I played Debussy. I played with all the ache and longing that I couldn't say out loud. The music swelled, filling the empty corridors of Ashworth Manor. I heard footsteps in the hall. They stopped just outside the door. I knew it was him. I played the final chord. I let the silence hang in the air. I didn't turn around. I just stood up and walked to the door. Julian was standing in the hallway, wearing his dressing gown. He looked pale, shaken. I didn't know you played, he whispered. There are many things you don't know about me, Julian, I said simply. You never asked. I walked past him to my room. I felt his eyes burning into my back until I turned the corner. The tension broke a week later. We were returning from a dull dinner party at Lady Danbury's estate. The weather had turned violent. A summer storm was lashing down, turning the roads to mud. The carriage lurched and swayed. Inside, the air was thick and hot. Julian sat opposite me. He was watching me. He had been watching me all night. At the party, I had debated politics with a member of parliament. I had made the table laugh. I had seen Julian staring at me with a mixture of shock and pride. The mouse had roared, and he didn't know what to do with her. You were spirited tonight, Julian said, his voice low, cutting through the sound of the rain. I was bored, I replied, smoothing my gloves. And Lord Heston is a fool. Someone had to tell him. Julian let out a short, surprised laugh. You sounded like... He stopped. He looked away. Like who? I pressed. Like her. His head snapped back to me. Do not start, Lily. Why not? I challenged. You compare me to her every day. I see it in your eyes. You look at me and you see a disappointment because I am not a memory. You are not a disappointment, he said sharply. You are confusing. Why? Because I have a brain. Because I have a soul. Because you are changing, he shouted, frustration boiling over. When I married you, you were quiet. You were simple. Now you leave notes in my books that challenge my beliefs. You play music that breaks my heart. You speak with a wit that... He stopped. The carriage hit a deep rut. I was thrown forward. Julian caught me. His hands gripped my arms, steadying me. I landed against his chest, my face inches from his. The carriage stopped moving. We were stuck in the mud. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, the silence was deafening. He didn't let go. I looked up at him. His grey eyes were dark, dilated. He wasn't looking at a mouse. He was looking at a woman. You feel it, don't you? I whispered. Feel what? He rasped. The spark. The connection. The thing you have been chasing for 5 years. I leaned in closer. It isn't in the past, Julian. It is here. He looked at my lips. His breath hitched. You remind me of her, he muttered, almost to himself. It's maddening. You sound like her. You even smell like her. Maybe, I whispered, daring everything, I am better than her. She left you, Julian. I stayed. Something in him snapped. He groaned, a low, guttural sound, and leaned in. His hand came up to cup my cheek. His thumb brushed my lower lip. The heat radiating from him was intoxicating. I closed my eyes, tilting my head back. Yes. Kiss me. Recognize me. His lips brushed mine. Soft. Tentative. Then hard. Desperate. For 1 second, he kissed me like he wanted to devour me. And then, he froze. He tore himself away, pushing me back onto the seat. He slammed his body against the opposite wall of the carriage, breathing hard, his face twisted in horror. I cannot, he choked out. I opened my eyes, my lips throbbing, my heart sinking. Julian. I cannot do this, he said, turning his face to the window, refusing to look at me. I promised my heart to her. To the lady in the mask. She is a ghost. I cried. I am your wife. It doesn't matter, he shouted. I gave her my word. Even if I never find her, I cannot betray her memory. Not even with you. He looked at me then. And I saw the tragedy of it. He wanted me. He liked me. He was falling for me. But his honor was stronger than his desire. He felt that loving Lily was cheating on the mystery lady. He was rejecting me, to stay loyal to me. We will not speak of this again, he said coldly, putting his mask of indifference back on. But his hands were shaking. The carriage lurched forward as the driver freed the wheel. We rode the rest of the way in silence. Back at Ashworth Manor, I went straight to my room. I didn't cry. I was done crying. I paced the floor. He loved me. I knew it now. He loved the mystery lady, and he was starting to love Lily. But he kept them in separate boxes in his mind. He couldn't reconcile them. As long as the mystery lady remained a faceless ghost, she was perfect. She was untouchable. And I could never compete with perfection. I had to destroy the ghost. I had to show him that the two women were one. I walked to the bottom of my wardrobe. I pulled out a loose floorboard. Underneath sat a small, velvet-covered box. I opened it. Inside lay the silver mask. It was delicate, filigree metal, tarnished with age. I hadn't touched it in 5 years. I picked it up. It felt cold and heavy in my hands. You want the mystery lady, Julian? I whispered into the dark room. Fine. I will give her to you. The Ashworth annual masquerade ball was in 2 days. He would be there, searching the crowd as he always did, looking for a flash of silver. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I held the mask up to my face. The mouse was gone. I will wear the mask, I vowed. I will walk up to him. And I will reveal the truth in front of everyone. I placed the mask back in the box. It was a dangerous plan. If he felt tricked, he might never forgive me. But I had to risk it. I was going to the ball. And this time, I wasn't running away at midnight. The plan is set. The mask is out of the box. Lily is ready to claim her husband's heart once and for all. She thinks the hard part is over. But she is wrong. Because someone else knows about the legend of the silver mask. Someone else wants the Duke. And she is about to steal Lily's identity before Lily can even step into the ballroom. Join me for Chapter 4, The Imposter. A rival appears. A lie is told. And Julian makes a choice that will shatter Lily's heart into 1,000,000 pieces. The betrayal is coming. I wore the mask to reveal the truth, but another woman stole my identity first. They say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. But in my case, it was theft. I had prepared for this night for 5 years. The Ashworth Masquerade Ball. The night I would finally put on the silver mask, walk up to my husband, and tell him the truth. I am the woman you have been searching for. I was ready. I had the mask in my hands. I had the courage in my heart. But I was 2 minutes too late. Before I could step into the light, the ballroom doors opened. And walking down the grand staircase was a woman wearing my mask. Wearing my gown. Speaking my words. She wasn't me. She was a fraud. An imposter who had stolen my diary and memorized my secrets. But Julian didn't know that. I watched my husband look at her with the adoration I had craved for months. I watched him hold her. I watched him fall in love with a lie. And later that night, when he came to my room, he didn't come to apologize. He came to ask for a divorce. He looked me in the eye and told me he had found his soulmate. And he offered to pay me to leave. I didn't fight him. I didn't scream. I just gave him one simple test. A test that only the real woman in the mask could pass. Welcome to Chapter 4. This is the betrayal that changes everything. If you are outraged for Lily, hit that like button. And make sure you are subscribed, because the truth is a stubborn thing, and the house of cards is about to fall. Now, let's go to the ball. The night of the masquerade ball arrived with a nervous energy that vibrated through the floorboards of Ashworth Manor. I was in my dressing room, staring at the vanity. My hands were shaking as I pinned my hair up. I had chosen a gown of shimmering silver silk, a near-perfect replica of the one I had stolen from the mistress 5 years ago. I reached for the velvet box where I kept the mask. Tonight, I told my reflection. Tonight, the mouse dies. Tonight, he sees you. I reached for my diary, the small leather book where I had written down every detail of that night 5 years ago, every conversation, every feeling. I wanted to read it one last time to bolster my courage. I felt under the mattress. It was empty. I frowned. I checked the nightstand. I checked the drawers. Gone. A cold prickle of unease ran down my spine. I never moved that diary. It contained my soul. It contained the proof of who I was. Maybe I left it in the library, I thought, trying to calm myself. I was reading there yesterday. Yes. That must be it. I couldn't worry about it now. The music was starting downstairs. I took the silver mask out of the box. I tied the ribbons behind my head. I looked in the mirror. The grey, invisible Lily was gone. Staring back at me was the mystery lady. The lioness. I took a deep breath and walked out the door. I stood at the top of the servants' stairs, hidden by a heavy tapestry. I wanted to time my entrance perfectly. I looked down at the ballroom. It was a sea of color and feathers. And there, in the center, standing alone like a dark island in a colorful sea, was Julian. He looked devastating in formal black evening wear and a black domino mask. But his posture was rigid. He was scanning the crowd, his eyes darting frantically, looking for Silver. Searching for a ghost. I am coming, Julian, I thought, my heart swelling with love. Just turn around. I stepped out from behind the tapestry. I prepared to descend the grand staircase. Announcing the arrival of the Contessa Elena di Rossi, the crowd hushed. All eyes turned to the main double doors. The doors swung open. And my heart stopped beating. Walking into the ballroom was a vision in silver. She was tall, statuesque, and moved with a predatory grace. She wore a gown of silver silk. And on her face, she wore a silver mask. It wasn't identical to mine, it was flashier, adorned with diamonds, but the effect was undeniable. She paused at the top of the stairs. She looked directly at Julian. Julian froze. I saw his glass slip from his fingers and shatter on the floor. He didn't move. He couldn't. The Contessa walked down the stairs. The crowd parted for her. She walked straight up to Julian. I was paralyzed. I stood in the shadows, unable to breathe, unable to scream. She stopped inches from him. She reached out a gloved hand and touched his lapel, a gesture so intimate it made me wince. I couldn't hear what she said at first. I crept closer, hiding behind a marble pillar. You have been looking for me, my lord, the Contessa purred. Her voice was rich, husky, nothing like mine. Julian stared at her, mesmerized. It cannot be. You don't believe me? The Contessa smiled beneath her mask. She leaned in. Do you remember the garden? Do you remember what I told you about the moon? Julian nodded, entranced. I told you, she whispered, loud enough for me to hear, that the moon looked like a broken coin, spent by a careless god. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stop the scream. That was my line. That was exactly what I had written in my diary. She had stolen it. She had stolen my diary, read my most private memories, and was now feeding them back to him to seduce him. It is you, Julian breathed. The look on his face, it shattered me. It was the look I had prayed for. The look of wonder. Of absolute, unconditional love. But it wasn't directed at me. I have waited 5 years, Julian choked out. He took her hand. I knew you would come. He swept her onto the dance floor. The orchestra swelled. They began to dance. I stood there, in the shadows, wearing my silver dress and my silver mask. I was the original. She was the cheap copy. But he couldn't see the difference. He didn't want to see the difference. He wanted the fantasy, and she was serving it to him on a silver platter. He looks happy. I jumped. The Dowager Duchess was standing beside me. She wasn't wearing a mask. She looked old and tired. He thinks he has found her, I whispered, tears sliding down under my mask. But she is a liar. She stole my diary. The Dowager looked at the dancing couple, then at me. There was a flicker of pity in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by steel. Does it matter? She asked coldly. Matter? Of course it matters. She is a fraud. She is a contessa, the Dowager corrected. She is wealthy. She is titled. And she has made him smile for the first time in 5 years. She turned to me. You were a business arrangement, Lily. You were a placeholder. If he has found happiness, even with a liar, who are you to destroy it? I am his wife, I said, my voice shaking. On paper, the Dowager said. The contract stands. You will remain his wife until he decides otherwise. Now, go to your room. You look ridiculous standing here in the dark. She walked away. I looked back at the dance floor. Julian was laughing. He was twirling the Contessa. He looked alive. I turned and ran. I ran up the back stairs, tearing the mask from my face. I ran to my room and locked the door. I ripped the silver dress off my body and threw it into the corner. I put on my plain grey nightgown, the uniform of the mouse. And I waited for the axe to fall. It was late when he came. There was a knock on the door. Not a polite knock. An excited, frantic knock. Lily, are you awake? I sat on the edge of the bed. Come in, Julian. He burst into the room. He was still wearing his evening clothes, but his tie was undone. His face was flushed. His eyes were shining with a manic light. He looked like a man who had just won a war. Lily, he said, pacing the room. I have news. Incredible news. The Contessa, I said dully. The woman in the mask. Yes. He stopped and looked at me, beaming. You saw her. It's her, Lily. It's really her, Elena. She explained everything. She was away in Italy, her family forbade her from writing, but she came back for me. She told you about the moon, I said. She knew everything. Julian exclaimed. She knew about the garden. She knew about the conversation by the fountain. No one else could know that. Except the woman who wrote it down, I thought bitterly. He walked over to me. He took my hands. His grip was warm, but it felt like a betrayal. Lily, he said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. I need to ask you something. And I know it is difficult. You want an annulment, I said. He blinked, surprised by my bluntness. Yes. I found her, Lily. I promised my heart to her. I cannot be married to you when my soul belongs to Elena. He let go of my hands and reached into his pocket. He pulled out a checkbook. I will be generous, he said quickly. I will pay you double what my mother promised. You will have the cottage. You will have a pension for life. You will never have to work again. I looked at the checkbook. He was buying me off. He was paying the mouse to scurry away so the lion could be with his lioness. He didn't see the irony. He didn't see that he was trading the truth for a lie. I felt a cold calm settle over me. I could fight. I could scream that she was a thief. I could show him the loose floorboard where I kept the mask. But he wouldn't believe me. He was intoxicated by her. If I fought now, I would just look like a jealous, desperate woman trying to cling to a duke. He needed to see the truth for himself. I stood up. I looked him in the eye. I will not fight you, Julian, I said softly. If you want an annulment, I will sign the papers. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Lily. You are a good woman. But, I raised a finger. Before you sign your life away to the Contessa, I want you to ask her one question. Julian frowned. What question? Ask her about the letters, I said. She told me she wrote them, Julian said defensively. She quoted lines from them. Ask her about the third letter, I said, my voice steady. The one written in October, 3 years ago. What about it? Ask her why the ink was smudged on the last paragraph. Julian looked confused. Smudged ink. Lily, these letters are old. Ink smudges. No, I said. This was specific. Ask her why it was smudged. If she wrote them, she will remember. Julian laughed nervously. This is a strange test, Lily. Why would you know about a smudge on a letter you've never read? I smiled. It was a sad, broken smile. Just ask her, Julian. If she is your soulmate, surely she remembers the moment she poured her heart out to you. I walked to the door and held it open. Good night, Your Grace. I hope you find what you are looking for. Julian stared at me. For a second, the doubt flickered in his eyes. He looked at the quiet mouse who had suddenly spoken with the authority of a queen. Good night, Lily, he said slowly. He walked out. I closed the door. I went to my desk. I pulled out a sheet of paper. I wasn't going to wait for the answer. I knew what was going to happen. I began to write my resignation. My goodbye. He would go to the Contessa. He would ask the question. And when the house of cards fell, I would be long gone. The seed of doubt has been planted. Julian is rushing to his beloved Contessa, convinced she is the one. But Lily's question is a ticking time bomb. Why was the ink smudged? And what happens when the Contessa gives the wrong answer? Join me for the grand finale, Chapter 5. The lie unravels. The chase begins. And Julian finally realizes that the love of his life wasn't the woman in the mask, it was the woman he left behind. Get your tissues ready. The ending is going to be spectacular. I tried to leave my husband, but he chased me down in the rain to beg forgiveness. One question. That was all it took to destroy a lie. I left my husband alone with the imposter. I left him with the woman who had stolen my mask, my diary, and my life. I thought he would choose her. I thought he would sign the annulment papers and let me disappear into the night. But I left him with a test. Ask her about the ink smudge. It seemed like a small detail. But that smudge held the secret of a storm that happened 5 years ago. A secret only I knew. When the Contessa gave the wrong answer, the Duke's world shattered. He realized he was holding a fraud. And he realized that the woman he had been searching for, the woman with the soul of fire, was the wife he had called a quiet mouse. Now, he is racing against time. I am standing on a train platform in the pouring rain, ready to leave forever. He is riding a horse through the mud, desperate to catch me before the whistle blows. Sound effect, a romantic orchestral swell, triumphant and soaring. Welcome to the finale. The mask is off. The truth is out. And the groveling, oh, the groveling is going to be spectacular. If you are ready for the kiss of the century, hit that like button. And make sure you are subscribed, because next week, we are starting a brand new story about a scandalous Scottish laird. But for now, let's catch a train. Julian stood in the Contessa's private parlour. It was luxurious, scented with heavy perfume. The Contessa was reclining on a chaise lounge, sipping champagne, looking every inch the victorious future Duchess. Oh, Julian, she purred. Come sit by me. Why are you standing there so stiffly? We have 5 years to make up for. Julian didn't move. His heart was pounding, but not with love. It was pounding with a strange, cold dread. Lily's voice echoed in his head. Just ask her. Elena, Julian said, his voice tight. I was reading your letters again last night. The old ones. The Contessa smiled, but her eyes flickered. Oh. You kept them. How sweet. I did, Julian said. Do you remember the third letter? The one you sent in October? Of course, she lied smoothly. I poured my heart into every word. There was a smudge, Julian said, watching her face closely. On the last paragraph. The ink was ruined. Do you remember why? The Contessa laughed. She took a sip of champagne, tossing her hair back. My darling, I was writing to the love of my life. I was overcome with emotion. I must have been crying. Yes, that was it. My teardrops stained the page. She looked at him, expecting him to be moved. Julian felt his blood turn to ice. Tears, he repeated flatly. Yes. Tears of longing. You are lying, Julian whispered. The Contessa froze. Excuse me? It wasn't tears, Julian said, his voice rising. It was rain. He took a step toward her. I remember that day perfectly. It was a storm. You slipped the letter under the estate gate, but the wind caught it. You had to chase it into the mud. You wrote the last line outside, under the gazebo, while the rain lashed down. You told me in the next letter that you were soaked to the bone. The Contessa's face went pale. She stammered, well, it was 5 years ago. I forgot. You forgot. Julian roared. You forgot the storm. You forgot the gazebo. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the way she held her glass. He saw the way she smiled. She was beautiful. But she was empty. You stole the diary, he realized, the horror washing over him. You stole her words. You stole her mask. Julian, please. Get out, he said, trembling with rage. Get out of my sight before I forget that I am a gentleman. He didn't wait for her to leave. He turned and ran. He ran out of the hotel. He jumped onto his horse. He galloped back to Ashworth Manor as if the hounds of hell were snapping at his heels. Lily. The name crashed through his mind. Lily knew about the smudge. Lily knew about the poetry. Lily played the piano. God help me, he thought. The mouse. It was the mouse all along. He burst into the manor. He didn't greet the servants. He took the stairs 2 at a time. Lily, he shouted. He threw open the door to her bedroom. Silence. The room was pristine. The wardrobe doors were open and empty. The little trinkets she had placed on the vanity were gone. She was gone. He ran to the bed. Sitting on the center of the pillow were 3 things. First, the annulment papers. Signed in her neat, elegant hand. Second, the silver mask. The real one. Tarnished and bent, the one he remembered. And third, a note. He picked it up. His hands shook so hard he could barely read. My heart belongs to you, it read. Past, present, and future. But I will not stay where I am not seen. Goodbye, Julian. He stared at the handwriting. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the old, yellowed love letter he carried everywhere. He held them side by side. The loops of the Y. The cross of the T. They were identical. The scream that tore out of his throat was a sound of pure agony. No. He sank to his knees, clutching the note. He had called her a mouse. He had told her she had no fire. He had told her not to touch the letters that she wrote. I am an idiot, he sobbed. I am a blind, arrogant fool. He looked at the window. It was pouring rain. She had signed the papers. She was leaving. The train, he gasped. She said she would go to the country. He scrambled up. He grabbed the mask. He grabbed the note. He ran back to his horse. The train station was a blur of steam and shadows. I stood on the platform, clutching my small valise. The rain was soaking through my grey cloak, but I didn't care. I felt numb. All aboard for the Northern Line, the conductor shouted. I stepped toward the train car. This was it. The end of the Duchess of Ashworth. I would go back to being a seamstress. I would forget him. Lily. The shout pierced the noise of the storm. I froze. My foot hovered over the step. I turned around. A horse was galloping onto the platform, actually onto the platform, scattering terrified passengers. The rider jumped off before the beast had even stopped moving. It was Julian. He looked wild. He was drenched, his hair plastered to his forehead, his fine coat covered in mud. He was gasping for air. He saw me. Don't, he shouted, running toward me. Don't get on that train. I stood my ground. Go back to your Contessa, Julian. There is no Contessa, he yelled, stopping a few feet away from me. She is a fraud. She didn't know about the rain. I told you she wouldn't, I said quietly. I know. He held up the crumpled note and the mask. I know, Lily. I saw the handwriting. I saw the mask. He dropped the items into the mud. He didn't care about them anymore. He only cared about me. He dropped to his knees. Right there, on the dirty, wet platform, in front of 50 strangers. The Duke of Ashworth knelt in the slush. Julian, get up, I hissed. You are making a scene. I don't care, he shouted, looking up at me with eyes full of tears and rain. Let them look. Let them see what a fool I have been. He reached out and grabbed the hem of my cloak. I fell in love with a memory, he choked out. I spent 5 years worshipping a ghost. And I was so blind, so incredibly blind, that I didn't see the reality standing right in front of me. You called me a mouse, I reminded him, my voice trembling. I lied, he said fiercely. You are not a mouse. You are the fire. You are the ink. You are the music that haunts my halls. You are my heart, Lily. He squeezed my cloak. Please. Do not leave me. I cannot survive being the Duke without you. I cannot survive living without you. I looked down at him. I saw the arrogance gone. I saw the pride stripped away. I saw the man I had met in the garden 5 years ago, vulnerable, lonely, and desperately in love. I dropped my valise. Stand up, Julian, I whispered. He stood, looking at me with terrified hope. You really are an idiot, I said, smiling through my tears. I know, he breathed. But, I stepped closer, you are my idiot. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He pulled me into his arms. He didn't kiss me politely. He didn't kiss me like a stranger at an altar. He kissed me with 5 years of hunger. It was a fire-consuming, soul-deep kiss that made the world dissolve. The rain, the train, the crowd, it all vanished. There was only us. The ink and the spark. Finally united. 1 month later, we returned to the chapel at Ashworth Manor. There were no guests. Just us. I wasn't wearing the cream dress. I was wearing silver. Julian stood at the altar. But this time, he wasn't looking at the crucifix. He was looking at me. His eyes were clear, bright, and full of adoration. We didn't need a priest. We just needed each other. Julian took my hands. Julian, he said, his voice steady and strong, take thee, Lily. Not as a placeholder. Not as a fake bride. But as my soulmate. He slid the ring back onto my finger. He leaned in close, his forehead resting against mine. No more ghosts, he whispered. No more masks. I smiled. No more ghosts. He kissed me gently. My heart belongs to you, he whispered, echoing the words he had said at our first wedding, but with a completely different meaning. Past, present, and future. And this time, I believed him. The mouse became the lioness. And the Duke finally found his Duchess. Thank you for listening to Lily and Julian's story. I hope it reminded you that true love sees past the mask. If you loved this series, please leave a silver heart emoji in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. Next week, we are traveling to the Scottish Highlands for a story about a runaway bride and a warrior laird. Until then, keep writing your own love story.